You don't see yourself as lazy. That's the tension. You set goals. You plan properly. You feel serious when you start. For a few days, sometimes even a few weeks, you move with focus. Then something subtle happens. You miss one day. You feel slightly off. The rhythm breaks. And instead of correcting it immediately, you begin negotiating. You tell yourself you'll restart Monday. You say you just need to reset. You promise you'll come back stronger. And quietly, the standard drops. This is why you never stay consistent. Not because you lack ambition. Not because you lack intelligence. But because you are unknowingly protecting your comfort more than your identity. Here's a micro scenario. It's Wednesday evening. You plan to work out at 7 p.m. You're not exhausted. You're just slightly tired. The couch feels easier. You tell yourself one missed workout doesn't matter. You scroll for 40 minutes. The workout doesn't happen. Now nothing dramatic occurred. But something important did. You voted for a different identity. Consistency is not lost in dramatic failure. It's lost in small negotiations that feel reasonable. In this video, you will understand why you break momentum even when you care, the hidden mental patterns that sabotage repetition, and the internal shift required to become someone who doesn't rely on motivation at all. Not hype, not emotional spikes, just clarity. Because the problem isn't that you start weak. It's that you don't understand what consistency actually requires. And until that becomes clear, you will keep restarting your life in small cycles, never building long enough to see results. If you never stay consistent, it is not random. It follows a structure. There are 4 internal mechanisms working against you. First, emotional negotiation. You decide what to do based on how you feel in the moment rather than the standard you set earlier. Your mood becomes the authority. The problem is that mood fluctuates daily. Standards must not. Second, self-licensing bias. After doing something good, you subconsciously give yourself permission to relax. You eat clean for 3 days, so you deserve junk food. You work hard Monday, so Tuesday becomes softer. You believe effort earns inconsistency. In reality, it demands repetition. Third, identity misalignment. You see discipline as something you try, not something you are. When discipline is a behavior, it competes with comfort. When it is identity, it overrides comfort. This difference determines whether you persist or pause. Fourth, the motivation dependency loop. You wait to feel inspired before acting. When energy is high, you execute. When energy drops, you stop. This creates unstable performance cycles. You mistake emotional intensity for commitment. Consider a grounded example. Someone decides to wake up at 6 a.m. daily. The first week feels powerful. They post about it. They feel productive. Then one night they sleep late. The alarm rings. They feel heavy. They hit snooze once. Then twice. In that moment, no one is watching. There is no applause. Only a quiet decision. And that decision reveals the real structure. Consistency fails not because the plan was flawed, but because the identity wasn't stable enough to enforce it when emotion changed. So here's the shift you will gain today. You will stop trying to stay motivated. You will stop negotiating with temporary feelings. You will understand how to detach action from emotion and attach it to self-respect. Because once repetition becomes a reflection of who you are, not how you feel, stability replaces intensity. And intensity was never the goal. Reliability was. Let's break this down deeper. Because if you don't understand the internal mechanics, you will keep blaming the surface. 1. Emotional negotiation is eroding your authority. Every time you say, "I don't feel like it," you transfer authority from your standards to your emotions. Emotions are temporary signals. Standards are chosen commitments. When emotions lead, consistency collapses. Imagine this workplace scenario. You told yourself you would spend one focused hour daily improving a skill that could increase your income. Maybe it's learning sales. Maybe it's coding. Maybe it's refining communication. Monday and Tuesday, you do it. Wednesday, work feels draining. By evening, your brain wants relief. You justify skipping the session because today was intense. But intensity is not an exception clause. When you skip, nothing explodes. But internally, a hierarchy shifts. Comfort just outranked growth. This is subtle, but repetition of this pattern trains your identity. You begin seeing yourself as someone who tries when convenient. Rohn said, "We must all suffer one of two pains. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret." Most people unconsciously choose the second because it is delayed. Emotional negotiation feels harmless in the moment. But over months, it compounds into instability. Consistency requires removing the vote from emotion. You do the work because you said you would, not because it feels aligned that evening. The identity implication is simple. Are you someone whose word to yourself means something? Or does it expire when you feel slightly uncomfortable? When you answer that honestly, the problem becomes clear. Let's move deeper. 2. Self-licensing is destroying momentum. You think rewards keep you balanced. But often, rewards sabotage progress. Self-licensing bias works like this. After effort, you feel entitled to ease. You saved money this week, so you splurge unnecessarily on the weekend. You ate clean for 5 days, so you binge on Saturday. You were productive in the morning, so the afternoon becomes passive. The mind says, "I earned this." But consistency is not built in bursts. It's built in continuity. Here's a grounded example. A friend once committed to paying off debt. For 2 months, he tracked expenses carefully. Every dollar was intentional. Then he received a small bonus at work. Instead of applying it to the debt, he upgraded his phone. His reasoning? "I've been disciplined. I deserve it." The bonus wasn't the problem. The identity behind the decision was. He saw discipline as temporary effort rather than permanent standard. When discipline becomes something you perform, you look for exits. When discipline becomes who you are, you stop looking for permission to relax. This is where many people fail financially, physically, and professionally. They oscillate between strict and loose, between rigid and indulgent, between focused and distracted. Momentum dies in the swing. Consistency requires flattening the emotional spikes. No dramatic restriction. No dramatic reward. Just steady repetition. The identity implication: are you building momentum or periodically interrupting it to feel good? The difference determines long-term stability. Now let's address something deeper. 3. You are addicted to intensity, not progress. This is uncomfortable. You don't actually crave consistency. You crave the feeling of starting. The new plan. The clean notebook. The Monday reset. The early enthusiasm. Intensity gives dopamine. Repetition gives results. These are not the same. Consider physical health. Someone joins a gym with high energy. New shoes. Structured plan. First week feels transformative. They post about it. They talk about it. They feel different. By week 3, the excitement fades. Workouts feel normal. There's no novelty. And that's where the real work begins. But most people mistake fading excitement for loss of progress. So they switch programs. Or stop entirely. You see this in long-term planning too. You set a 5-year goal. You map it clearly. For 2 weeks, you think about it daily. Then daily life takes over. The goal moves to the background. Not because it's unimportant, because it's not emotionally stimulating anymore. Consistency requires accepting boredom as proof of alignment. If your routine feels normal, you are stabilizing. If it feels dramatic every week, you are unstable. There's a difference between excitement and commitment. Excitement spikes. Commitment persists. You must decide which one you value. And that leads to the final layer. 4. Your identity is conditional. This is the root. You act disciplined when circumstances are supportive. When sleep is good. When mood is high. When schedule is light. When feedback is positive. But when friction appears, discipline disappears. That means discipline is conditional. And conditional identity cannot sustain consistency. Let's take social boundaries as an example. You decide you will protect your time. No unnecessary late-night conversations. No random distractions. For a week, you hold it. Then a friend calls at 11 p.m. You don't want to seem rigid. So you answer. One night becomes 3. Your standard bends to avoid discomfort. This isn't about being harsh. It's about clarity. If your identity changes based on who is around you, it was never anchored. Consistency requires internal anchoring. You do what aligns with your chosen standard, even when no one praises it and even when someone dislikes it. This doesn't mean inflexibility. It means stability. Most inconsistency is not a productivity issue. It's an identity weakness. You are not fully convinced that discipline is who you are. So you treat it like an optional layer. Remove the option, and repetition becomes automatic. Here is the reinforcement. Consistency is not about doing more. It is about removing negotiation. It is about flattening emotional spikes. It is about ending self-licensing. It is about stabilizing identity across moods, environments, and outcomes. Once that internal architecture changes, behavior follows naturally. Until then, you will keep restarting. You don't become consistent by increasing effort. You become consistent by redefining who is in charge. Right now, in your life, something is making the final decision. Sometimes it's mood. Sometimes it's convenience. Sometimes it's social pressure. Sometimes it's fatigue. Consistency begins the moment your chosen standard becomes the highest authority in the room. Discipline is not intensity. It is identity in action. When discipline is effort, you will eventually feel tired of it. When discipline is identity, it feels neutral, normal, expected. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't debate it every night. You don't need inspiration. You don't post about it. It is part of who you are. So it happens without drama. That is the level consistency must reach in your work, your finances, your health, your long-term plans. Not emotional. Not heroic. Automatic. This is where compounding enters. Small repeated actions seem insignificant in isolation. One workout. One focused hour. One saved dollar. One protected boundary. They look small. They feel small. But consistency compounds quietly. 5 focused hours per week become 250 hours per year. $10 saved daily becomes thousands over time. One extra professional skill practiced consistently separates careers over 5 years. The effect is invisible in the short term and undeniable in the long term. Inconsistency also compounds. One skipped day becomes a skipped week. One financial exception becomes normalized overspending. One relaxed boundary becomes a new standard. You are always compounding something, discipline or drift. Responsibility is not about guilt. It is about ownership. You cannot control every external variable. You cannot control outcomes perfectly. But you can control whether your actions align with your declared standards. Self-respect grows when your behavior matches your word. And self-respect is stabilizing. When you trust yourself, you move differently. Decisions become simpler. Negotiation decreases. Emotional noise quiets. Consistency is not built through pressure. It is built through alignment. You decide once who you are. Then your daily actions confirm it. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Repeatedly. And that quiet repetition is what separates people who restart constantly from people who build. You have tried intensity. You have tried new plans. You have tried waiting for the right mood. None of it solved the real problem. Because the real problem was never strategy. It was authority. Who decides what you do on an ordinary Tuesday when no one is watching? Who wins when comfort and commitment disagree? If your emotions decide, you will always fluctuate. If your identity decides, you will stabilize. Consistency is not dramatic. It does not feel powerful every day. Most days, it feels ordinary, repetitive, even boring. But that boredom is structure. That repetition is alignment. That quiet follow-through is self-respect being practiced. You don't need to become more motivated. You need to become less negotiable. The person who stays consistent is not special. They simply stop debating with themselves. They chose their standards once and then removed the daily vote. And when you remove the vote, you remove the instability. From that point forward, your life stops restarting. It starts building. Not in bursts. Not in emotional waves. But in steady, undeniable progression. And steady progression, repeated long enough, becomes inevitability.